Yeah, hello girls. Today I want to finish the topic of predation. In my last PowerPoint I talked about predation and all the adaptations that both prey and predator have developed to either become really effective predators or to avoid predation. And the last topic I touched on was mimicry. So mimicry is when animals pretend that they are something bigger or something more dangerous than they actually are, and they do that to avoid predation. So here in this picture we see a moth with eye spots, and I've mentioned that already earlier in the last PowerPoint. Then here this one is actually the hind side of a beetle, and you can see the pattern on that beetle looks like it is some sort of lizard or snake or something, and with a mouth and some really dangerous teeth here. And the animals on the bottom show warning coloration, so yellow and red in the animal kingdom usually indicate that these animals are very badly tasting or toxic to the predators. There are two types of mimicry. One is Batesian mimicry, where harmless prey pretend to be a harmful animal. And then there's Mullerian mimicry, and that means that lots of species that are actually inedible resemble each other. So that means that there is a common image for the predators to avoid, and there is a higher chance that the predators will learn to avoid these species. Here is an example for Batesian mimicry. So this is the monarch butterfly, and the monarch butterfly feeds on milkweed, and that means it contains toxic glycosides, and as a result the monarch butterfly becomes very toxic and unpalatable to the predators. And on the right you see a viceroy butterfly, and this one isn't toxic at all, but it resembles the monarch butterfly really closely, and a predator wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So the predator would avoid the viceroy as well, but the viceroy doesn't have to make that investment to develop these features to become actually poisonous. Here we have Mullerian mimicry, and what you see here are two types of wasps. You can see they have slightly different coloration. See, this one here has these two stripes here, and this one doesn't. So they're two different species, but overall they look very similar. So they have these yellow and black stripes and coloration, which indicate to the predator that these are dangerous animals. So what is this? These are actually all animals that can defend themselves, so they can all sting, and you can see that they're all indicating that to their predators in a very similar way. They all have this yellow and black or orange and black pattern, and you can see that they also have slightly similar body shape. Here, however, we have an example of the honeybee, which is actually an animal that can defend itself and can sting, and then an absolutely harmless fly, the hoverfly, and the hoverfly is also showing that black and yellow pattern, trying to look as dangerous as possible, and thereby avoiding predation. Here we have two snakes. Again, one snake, the one here on the top, is actually venomous, which means it has poison, whereas the other one is completely harmless. But by mimicking the color of the venomous snake, it is also pretending to be poisonous. And here is another example of 4 frog species, all indicating that they are probably poisonous to more or less poisonous. And you can see they all have these really bright warning colors, and they always have this black and colored pattern. And here is another nice one. So here is the snake, and you can see its head here and 2 eyes, and here is totally harmful larva, and you see it has this color pattern which makes it look very much like a snake. And another one where an animal is pretending to be dangerous. This is a harmless butterfly, and you see it also has these yellow and black stripes like a wasp has. Now the question is, how does toxicity evolve if the prey has to be eaten in order for the predator to learn from the experience? So in other words, how does it help a wasp to have black and yellow stripes? Because once the predator knows that it can defend itself, it's probably already harmed and killed possibly. So what we think is that the predator learns from that experience. So when it comes across one wasp and makes a bad experience, it will from then onwards avoid that species altogether. So for the species as a whole, it is an advantage to have these warning colors, although for the single individual that happens to get attacked by a predator who hasn't learned that yet, it obviously doesn't help. They also found that in these species that develop toxicity and warning colors, the animals sometimes live beyond the age where they are still reproductively active. You know, most animals actually, once they have had offspring, they actually die, and there are only very few animals that live beyond this reproductive age. And they find that some of these animals that show these toxicity do, and they think that these old animals are then eventually going to get eaten by a predator, and then the predator will learn from that experience. So that is also then benefiting the species as a whole, not the individual, obviously. Yeah, here's. And for writing notes, I would like you to look on page 112 to 119 in your ESA study guide, and these are the workbook pages that cover predator and prey